Hey, how's it going everyone? My name's Coda and welcome to Coda Unlocks. In today's video, I had a viewer request that I walk you guys through all the different enemies in the game and how you can defeat them. If you have a similar such request for how you would like to get better at the game, let me know in the comment section down below. Now, I did already record this video, but the footage got corrupted, so we're just gonna get right into it. For the first part, I'm going to break down the fact that there are 3 different ways you can deal with characters. You can nuke them down with high damage from characters such as Yanfei, Eula, Diluc, whoever you might have that's a main DPS that can do a lot of damage. Or you can control them through animo characters such as Venti that can group them together for you. Sucrose also works great for this. Or you can freeze them using Barbara and Kaya, for instance, in a team, or any other Hydro or Cryo type character. You'll be able to freeze the enemies, locking them in place, preventing them from doing any damage to you. To go down all the enemies, I will be using the Adventurer book to break them all down into the 3 different categories: the easy enemies, the elite enemies, and the boss enemies. We'll be starting off with the easy enemies. The first one it has to recommend is the Fatou. So for the Fatou, there are several different kinds. There are Hydro, Animo, Pyro, Electro, Cryo, and Geo, although there isn't a Geo available here. All these different types of Fatou drop the similar mats, but each has a different combat style. Starting off with the Hydro, he's a healer, so he will try and restore the health of any other Fatou or other enemies within the area. The Animo will try and defend other Fatou and will allow you to hit him after creating an Animo shield. If you hit him with any elemental type other than Animo or Geo, he will create a vortex of that element and throw that vortex back at you in the form of a punch. It will do increased damage. The Pyro sharpshooter Fatou will try and shoot multiple flaming shots at you. But if you are using a short character, you will actually be able to get up close and he will miss his shots. The Electro will do large AoE damage with his hammer. And the Cryo Fatou arguably does the most amount of damage out of them all with sustained flamethrower-like damage from his cryo gun. With all Fatou, after the battle has gone on for a few seconds, or after sustaining a certain amount of damage, they will all attempt to activate a shield of their respective elements. The shield has to be stripped away in order to do maximum damage. The easiest way to strip away shields is to use a positively affecting element. What I mean by this is an element that can cause a beneficial reaction, such as with the Electro Fatou, for instance. If you hit him with a cryo attack, you will cause superconduct. Certain elements strip away other elements much faster. For Electro, cryo is the fastest. For Cryo, Pyro is the fastest. For Hydro, cryo is still the fastest.
Aristocratic etiquette is all just for show.
And for Pyro,
Just smile
Hydro
and nod
is the
along.
fastest. For the Geo and Animo Boxer, they are a little bit different. The Geo can be easily stripped away with a great sword or other Geo attacks. And the Animo Boxer will not actually generate a defensive barrier because his innate ability is a shield. So with that all being said, the most efficient way to deal with these enemies is to have characters on your team that have positively affecting elements. If I was going to fight against the Electro Fatou, I would use cryo characters such as Eula and Rosaria. If I was going to fight against the Cryo Fatou, I would have Pyro characters such as Diluc or Benny. And for all these characters, they can be picked up by Animo attacks, so using somebody like Venti or Sucrose is also very effective. And lastly, you could freeze them before they activate their barriers to try and kill them before they get the chance. That's it for the Fatou. Who's next on the list? The Whopper Flower comes in several different varieties. There is the Pyro Whopper Flower that you see down there. There is also Cryo Whopper Flowers and Electro Whopper Flowers. All of them have different attack and various different movement capabilities between them, but they generally act in the same way. They will try to bury underground and get distance in between you and them, but they will not want to be too far away. If they are too far away, they will jump into the ground and appear right next to the player. After a short amount of time, they will attempt to coat themselves in their element. For instance, these Pyro Whopper Flowers will coat themselves in a Pyro Shield and begin to charge an attack. As they do so, if you hit them with a positively affecting element, it will strip their shield and leave them stunned for a few seconds. The quickest way to deal with a Whopper Flower is to nuke them down as quickly as possible, and once they begin to generate their shield, hit them with a positively affecting element to stun them. They can be picked up by vortexes and can be frozen in place. The next enemy of note on the list is the Hilly Churro. The Hilly Churro is very basic as far as their damage and health. They are the most standard enemy in the game. They come in a wide variety that tries to mimic the capabilities of other characters and enemies. You can see we have 3 Hilly Churro sharpshooters here that act as bow characters of various elements. We have Electro, Pyro, and Cryo. There's also a shield Geo character that has a Geo club. While they can do damage of their respective element, they are not infused with their element and do not become infused with their element. What this means is the Cryo enemy will take maximum Cryo damage and has no resistance to it. Same for the Pyro and the Electro. However, they will also deal out Electro, Pyro, and Cryo damage themselves. For the ones with the Geo Shield, the easiest way to take them out is with a Claymore Wielder, or with another Geo, as the shield will go away from Geo attacks and they have no resistance to it. Another form of the Hilly Churro is in the standard rock thrower punching Hilly Churro. It has no elemental attunement whatsoever and does physical damage. There's also the Sama Churro. Sama Churros are little mages. They come in Animo, Geo, Cryo, Electro, and Dendro elements. Each one tries to separate itself from you and has various different forms of attack. For all regular versions of Hilly Churro, the most convenient way to deal with them is simply to just attack them. They have no resistances. You can gather them up with a animal character, or you can freeze them if you wish to and hold them in place. They die extremely quickly and are really generally not much of a threat. Slimes are enemies that come in every natural elemental alignment. They are 100% immune to their own element. So for instance, this Geo slime cannot take Geo damage. However, because they are permanently infused with their element, they are perfect for causing elemental reactions. They come in 2 different varieties. There is the small slime as well as a large slime. Large slimes have more health, and each has a different type of attack mechanic. Geo and Cryo slimes will have a shield upon them. The shield must be stripped away according to their element, such as with a Claymore Wielder or Geo attacking the Geo slime, or with a Pyro character attacking an Electro slime. Because they are very common enemies that each are perfect catalysts for elemental reactions, they're not very strong and can be dealt with in any way. You can just flat out deal damage to them as long as you are not using the same type of element, and you can gather them up and freeze them. One of the most prolific enemies in the game is the Treasure Hoarder. They are basic humans, each coming in a variety of different types. There is the shovel enemy you see here, who has a shovel that can throw dirt in your eyes, but does relatively low damage. The crossbow wielder will do physical damage with his crossbow. The bottle thrower, the bottle thrower comes in a variety of hydro, cryo, electro, and pyro. Each one throws a bottle at your feet containing the element. They often come in pairs to create elemental reactions at your feet that can be quite annoying, especially the hydro and cryo when they are together. There is also one with a hammer, which will do the most damage out of them, but is relatively slow. Because they are just regular humans, you can hit them with any element you wish, you can freeze them, and you can, of course, group them together. The Noboshi are basically Ronin samurai that were added in Inazuma. They come in two different varieties, basic Ronin and armed Ronin. The basic Ronin have high damage, quick attacks, but relatively low health, whereas the armed Ronin can infuse himself with either Pyro or Electro and do very high damage and have very high health. What's also worrying is that if there's more than one Noboshi, and you defeat one without defeating the other soon after, the remaining Noboshi will heal and buff himself. So it's important if you fight more than one armed Noboshi that you take them both out at the same time. Aside from their elemental infusion to their weapons, however, they have no elemental resistance worth noting. You can just feel free to hit them with any attacks, freeze them, and group them. A new type of enemy added to Inazuma is the Spectre, and the last of the easy categorized enemies. The Spectre is an enemy that comes in a variety of different elements, however, they do not appear in the Electro element. They are infused with their element, much like a slime, so they do not take any damage from their own element. However, they are free to take elemental reactions. For instance, the Water Spectre here will take bonus damage from Electro, Pyro, and Cryo. Although they are relatively weak, they do come in quite an annoyingly spread out pack, so if you can gather them up with an animo character, is highly recommended. As well as, due to their ability to fly, a bow character is very much so recommended in order to deal with them. The Fatou Ascension Mage, although a Fatou, also has her own loot table and is thus categorized as a separate monster. She is relatively weak, her attacks dealing very low damage, but will start the battle by summoning 3 thunder flies. These thunder flies will make attacking her difficult, as your character will automatically lock onto the nearest enemy, one of which being the thunder fly. The easiest way to deal with her is to group her and the thunder flies together using an animo attack. As you can see, she will teleport away in order to maintain her distance, but otherwise poses very little threat until you get her going. Once you get her going, she will kill her own thunderflies and surround herself with the Electro element.
You really know how to get me going.
She will then begin to float towards the player, zapping you for high Electro damage. However, the barrier does have a health pool that will go away over time, allowing you to resume combat. Also, if you hit her with an elemental reaction such as a Cryo or Pyro attack, it will destroy the barrier faster. Otherwise, grouping, freezing, and just regular attacking is very effective. The next elite enemy is going to be the Abyssal Mage, often found next to other enemies such as the Hilly Churros here. They come in a variety of different types such as Pyro, Electro, Hydro, and Cryo. Each one will start the battle surrounded in a shield of its element. Each one has a different mechanic for the battle. For instance, the Hydro Mage will summon bubbles and will try to imprison you in one, which will suffocate you and cause damage over time. Each one is susceptible, however, to the element they are surrounded in. So, for instance, this Hydro Mage, if you hit it with a Cryo attack, will become frozen inside of its bubble, as well as helping you to shred its bubble faster than any other element. Also, if Abyss Mages come in 2 different elements to attack you, you can use Elemental Swirl from Animo in order to cause their 2 elements to collide and negatively affect each other. The most problematic thing about the Abyss Mages is not knowing which element you're going to come across when you first encounter them, and if you happen to come across, say, the Pyro element Abyss Mage, without a Hydro character to strip its shield, you could be in for a very long battle. But otherwise, they are susceptible to being grouped, and in some cases frozen, depending on what barrier they have. They will be easily defeated once you remove their barrier by any other attack, as they are not infused with their element without their bubble, and otherwise are a fairly basic enemy. The next enemy is the first of the Ruin series of enemies. This is the Ruin Guard. Although highly defensive, much like the other Ruin enemies, he is also capable of very high damage. The Ruin Guard has highly telegraphed attacks that are fairly easy to dodge, as well as a core in the center of its forehead. Hitting this core with an arrow from a bow character will cause him to be disrupted. Hitting him a second time while he is disrupted will disable him for a brief period of time. You can also hit the cross-shaped symbol located on its back. It takes increased damage from any other type of element, as well as can be frozen, however is too large to be gathered up with anima.
More speed.
Mecha Churros are next, and they are basically upgraded version of Hilly Churros. They come in a shield version and an axe version. The shield version can have a wooden shield, a cryo shield, or a geo shield. The cryo and wooden shields can both be easily taken away with pyro, whereas the geo shield can be destroyed with geo attacks or a claymore. All three shields, as a matter of fact, take extra damage from claymore wielders, so it's best to have one in your party if you are dealing with this enemy. Otherwise, they are basically Hilly Churros with bigger health pools, so you should deal with them accordingly to Hilly Churros. However, because they are bigger, they cannot be picked up with animo. To go along with the Fatou Ascension Mage, there is a male counterpart, the Fatou Assassin. They begin the battle by surrounding themselves with flaming swords that are very difficult to get in on, but afterwards going invisible, they are fairly easy to keep track of due to their black smoke, and if they infect themselves with an element, such as Hydro, they become covered in that element and are easy to follow. They will try and cast out multiple shadow clones of themselves throughout the fight. Once they get to around 6 shadow clones, each shadow clone will then do a dash attack at the player. This is extremely dangerous because if they manage to do so, you will most likely die. You can see here, he now has around 6 shadow clones, so his next attack will be to have each one attack the player.
Good grief.
Otherwise, he is a fairly weak enemy, being susceptible to all forms of damage, being able to be picked up by animal characters, and being able to be frozen. So deal with him accordingly. The next Ruin enemy is the Ruin Hunter. He can fly into the air and rain down damage, but otherwise is not all that much different from the Ruin Guard. You will not be able to stun or disrupt him, however, except for when he is in the air. When he's in the air, his inner core will glow, and hitting it with an arrow will immediately disable him for a large amount of time. Otherwise, he takes the same amount of damage, can be frozen, but cannot be picked up. The Geo hatchling is one of the first enemies you have to defeat in order to raise your weapons. He's very basic in his overall damage output, however, he is a bit chaotic in his movement. He likes to burrow under the ground and spin at you. When he is spinning directly at you, if you have a shield and he comes into contact with that shield, he will become stunned. That spin on the ground attack that he just performed, however, is his most dangerous form of the attack. If that connects with you and you do not get out of it in time, it will shred through your HP very rapidly. But otherwise, he is relatively not a threat. You can pick him up, freeze him, or just nuke him down with damage. The Hilly Churro Chieftain is the final version of the Hilly Churro. It comes in a Geo, Cryo, and Electro state. At the start of battle, they will become infused with their element, and thus must be stripped of it in order to give maximum damage. Their attacks are very wide-hitting, but also very well telegraphed for you to properly dodge and move out of the way of. Their shields are on a set timer. However, the most efficient way to rid them is to hit them with their positively affecting element. For a Geo shield such as this one, hitting it with a Claymore or a Geo attack will remove it the most efficiently. For Cryo, Pyro, as well as Claymore attacks will remove it. And for Electro, Cryo is the most efficient way. Next we have the adult Geo Bishop. The Geo Bishop is a basically carbon copy of the Chieftain Hilly Churros, however with a lot more slamming. You can see there after a couple slams it will land on its back and will be unable to move around for a few seconds.
More speed.
It does very high damage. You can see here that it has now infused itself with another element. That element is Electro in this case. They can also infuse themselves with Hydro, Cryo, or Pyro. Their attacks become much more dangerous in this state, and they are infused with the element, as you can see. As you see, he is now an Electro Geo Shop. However, he does still take Electro damage. But now he's opened up for combo damage, such as from a Cryo attack, causing Superconduct. Otherwise, he's just another large enemy that does a lot of damage. He can be frozen, especially if he is the Hydro version, or the Cryo version and you have a Hydro character. The Mirror Maiden is another new enemy that acts as the water counterpart to the Electroscension Mage. She will like to teleport around through her mirrors, can trap the player in a mirror attack, but relatively does not do much damage. She is, however, extremely tanky. She can be picked up and frozen, and it is relatively recommended to use as high damage as possible to nuke her down. Next on the list of Ruin creatures is the Ruin Sentinel. The Ruin Sentinel is this box back here that will unfold into one of 3 different varieties of Sentinels. There are Ruin Scouts, which are in the form of a jellyfish. There are Ruin Defenders, which get on all fours and can generate a very annoying shield. And there are the Ruin Attackers, which take the form of a snake. The snakes do incredibly high damage and can burrow through the ground to catch up to the player. The scouts are relatively simple to take care of, and the defenders take a lot more damage. Let's see what this one is. Oh, it's a defender. One of the latest enemies added to the game is the Rift Hound. The Rift Hound is these little wolf things that come in a small and large variety of an Electro Hound and a Geo Hound. These are Rift Hound whelps, whereas the large one is just called the Rift Hound. All of them have the same loot table and all of them use the same mechanic called corrosion. Corrosion means that even if you have a shield character, you will still take damage over time from their attacks. So it's best not to get hit at all. They can be picked up and frozen, with frozen being the most ideal option to deal with them, so they cannot attack you at all. And with that, we are done with the elite enemies. The only enemies left now are the bosses. Rather than teleport around to each boss, I'm just going to show you where they are on the map and give you my recommendations for dealing with them. The first enemy is the Electro Hypostasis. It is a relatively simple enemy to deal with. Bringing a Cryo or a Pyro character will help make this a breeze. The most recommended one to get is Zhangling to deal with the Electro Hypostasis, because once you bring it down to its last bit of health, it will go into a final stand mode. While in this final stand mode, it will attempt to heal while summoning 3 Electro Crystals. You have to destroy the Electro Crystals with elemental reactions before it has a chance to heal. The easiest way to do this is to use Zhangling's Burst at the very end whenever it brings out the 2 shields. Then you just have to run over to each of the Electro Crystals and break them. Next we have the Cryo Regisvine. Cryo Regisvine is a pretty simple enemy to defeat. Just bring a Pyro character. Pyro character can destroy its gem as well to increase damage to the Cryo Regisvine. Once its gem is broken, it will go into a down state where you can do damage unabatedly. After a few seconds, it will rise back up and it will move the location of its crystal to its head. Again, breaking it causes it to go into a down state. Next is the animal hypostasis. Relatively simple and straightforward here. I only recommend that you bring a tall character like Kaya. This is because in its final stage, it will summon animal particles in the air and will attempt to heal itself. You have to ride wind currents to go and collect these animal particles, which will prevent it from healing. A tall character has an easier time collecting the particles, and after you do that, you just simply have to remove the last bit of its health. Cryo Hypostasis, I highly recommend bringing a Pyro character, and to activate the torches along the outside. A shield character will also help you because its attacks can happen very rapidly and deal out a lot of damage, so bringing a strong shield is also very much so recommended. After it goes into its final stand, it will try and heal inside of an ice igloo, but it will also launch attacks at you. These attacks will form small little chunks of rock, and if you perform a charged attack on these chunks, it will send it right back at the igloo, shattering it after 3 igloo attacks hit it. You can also melt it with pyro elemental reactions, but sending the rocks back is more recommended. The Oceanid is a very annoying boss. It is very much so recommended to bring a cryo character as well as a bow character. Preferably both if you have them in the form of Diona. This is because the cryo character can help freeze the water projections created by the Oceanid. And there is a certain point whenever there are 3 flying birds summoned by the Oceanid. These are very difficult to hit unless you have a bow character with you. So those are the recommendations. The Primo Geofish can have different elemental attunements. It can be Electro, Cryo, Pyro, or Hydro, and it will drop rocks accordingly. However, it will always drop Geo rocks. The strategy here kind of depends on the alignment that it's in, but you will always want to bring somebody that can generate a shield. There'll be a certain point in the fight where it blasts out a high damaging attack. However, if you have a shield, you will reflect that damage right back at the Geofish. So it's best to have a shield and to save it for when these attacks are coming. Otherwise, just do as much damage as you can. The Pyro Regisvine, much like the Cryo Regisvine, is relatively weak. You will need a Hydro character, such as Barbara, to quickly break its gem, and then just do as much damage as you can while it's down. Geo Hypostasis is entirely recommended that you bring a Claymore-wielding character or a Geo-dealing damage character. However, if you do use a Geo character, such as, say, Ningguang, you should note that the Hypostasis itself cannot take Geo damage. However, the pillars it summons take increased Geo damage. So you can use the Geo character to break the pillars, then once you're able to hit the Hypostasis, hit it with a different character to deal with it quickly. The Perpetual Mechanical Array will summon multiple of the Rune Sentinels in its last stage, and is a Geo damaging unit, so if you happen to have Noelle, her shield can be quite handy. Otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward fight, not much different from the Ruined Sentinels in general. The Pyro Hypostasis practically requires that you bring a Hydro elemental character, such as Barbara. This is because at the beginning of the fight, it will coat itself in a shield created from Cryo. This is because it will coat itself in a shield created from Pyro, and the only way that element that really strips it is Hydro. Once you strip its shield, however, is relatively simple to damage, as long as you are not using a Pyro character. And during this stage, it will try and reform its shield by summoning Pyro crystals. Just simply hit the Pyro crystals once with a Hydro attack, and it will destroy them. Barbara and Mona are the best for this. Thundering Manifestation is relatively straightforward fight, not much going on otherwise. You can just nuke it down as quickly as possible. I do recommend a shield character because some of its attacks can catch you off guard and do quite a bit of damage. Mecha Kinky is very, very, very tanky and can deal out a lot of damage. However, once you learn his attack rotation, dodging him's not too difficult, and you could always just use a shield character in order to take the hits instead. Otherwise, just do as much damage as possible. It's got a lot of health. The Hydro Hypostasis is a relatively straightforward fight. However, bringing a cryo character, especially a cryo bow character, will save you a lot of time, as you can deal with the slime guards it summons a lot easier. During the last stage of its health, it will try and summon 3 different slimes that are infused with Hydro. These slimes will try and make their way to the Hydro Hypostasis to heal it. However, if you freeze them, they will lock in place, keeping them far away. Once the slimes are fully dead, the fight will end. The Golden Wolf Lord is a new one that was added. It's basically just a big Rift Hound. It will hit you with the corrosion attack and requires a Geo character to take out efficiently, as once it gets to about half health, it will decide to summon 3 wolf heads and create a shield for itself. The wolf heads will also shoot out attacks that will give you corrosion. The wolf heads take the most damage from Geo attacks. 2 to 3 Geo attacks will break a head, and once all 3 heads are broken, the Wolf Lord will fall down and go into a stun state where you can do bonus damage to it. Otherwise, like I said, basically just a big wolf Rift Hound. DeValen is the first of the weekly bosses that you unlock at AR 20. The weekly bosses are notable because you can only get rewards from them the first time you fight them in a week. The main reward they drop for end-game players is Dream Solvent that can convert the rewards from one weekly boss to the rewards of another weekly boss. But they will very rarely also drop billets, which can be used to craft weapons. From AR 50 onward, you will be guaranteed a 5-star artifact whenever you fight bosses. So that's the only real reason why, say, somebody like DeValen is fought in the end game. The strategy to defeat him is pretty straightforward. Simply dodge his attacks when he lands on the platform. Attack his foot. Once his shield is broken, he will go into a down state. Then you climb on his back and do as much damage to the thorn on his back as possible. If you have a character like Ganyu who does high ranged damage, you can actually get away with not having to climb onto his back and can instead attack the thorn from the ground. Lupus Boreas, the Dominator Wolves, is another weekly boss that you can unlock after doing a quest with Razor. He's a fairly annoying boss in that his hitbox is different depending on the attacks that he's using. A shielded character is very recommended for this fight, as well as using somebody with Pyro. He will take reduced damage from no damage from cryo attacks, and I believe reduced damage from animo attacks. Ajdaha is one of the newer bosses that was added. Ajdaha is one of the newer bosses that was added. His main mechanics revolve around shielding, so bringing a shielded character is necessitated. You will have sigils placed on you depending on what elemental attack he hits you with, and these sigils will drain your health over time. However, if you have a shield, they will not drain your health, so keeping a shield on you is a must. The stones he drops, as well as his elemental attacks, depend on the weekly rotation. Currently the week is Pyro and Electro, so he will infuse himself with both Pyro and Electro throughout the fight. Knowing what elemental rotation you are in is basically necessary in order to successfully defeat him, as you don't want to bring a Pyro character in to fight him when he has Pyro resistance. The Childe fight is fairly straightforward. He does not act the way he does, however, whenever he is a character. He has 3 different stages to his fight. Regular Childe will do high damaging hydro attacks that put Riptide on you, but are fairly well telegraphed, and he can also summon a giant narwhal that will one-shot you. The best way to avoid the narwhal from killing you is to quickly be next to him when he summons it. The next phase of his attack, he will infuse himself with Electro, and will do much more rapid and long-reaching attacks. This is when it is best to keep your distance and, at the best, use a bow character. However, if you have a shield character, you can still keep in there and keep doing damage. When he gets to his third and final phase, he will do increased damage and will hit you with elements of both styles of his attack. However, his health pool is not all that high, so as long as you have high damage, you can come out of this pretty easily. And lastly, the most recent fight is against Senora, the Crimson Witch of Flames. She has two different phases to her fight. In her first phase, she will surround herself in a cryo cocoon and do cryo attacks at you. The air will be filled with sheer cold, causing you to fill up in your sheer cold bar, much like in Dragonspine. Once that bar reaches full, you will take damage over time. There are 4 pyro crystals around the area that she's in. Standing in these pyro crystals will remove your sheer cold over time, or if you break one, it will remove it instantaneously. After you bring her down from her first phase, she will enter into a cocoon. While in this cocoon, you will be attacked with icicles coming from it consistently. However, crimson butterflies will spawn throughout the map. Picking up a crimson butterfly and attacking the cocoon will remove a large chunk of its HP. Once the cocoon is shredded, you will be in her last stand. Her last stand is the Crimson Witch of Flames. She does pyro attacks and teleports throughout the room. She will even become a pyro tornado that will shear the ground, increasing the new mechanic, Sweltering Heat. Sweltering Heat works like sheer cold, but hot. There are now 4 cryo crystals throughout the map. Standing next to one of these will remove the smoldering heat, and breaking one will completely remove it, as well as removing any smolders from the ground, allowing you to stand there without having to worry about it stacking up the heat. She will take reduced cryo damage in her cryo phase and reduced pyro damage in her pyro phase. So having a character that deals neither of these attacks as your main DPS, or 2 different DPS that deal between them. So you can use a pyro character on the first phase and a cryo character in the second phase. However you wish to deal with her damage-wise, she has a lot of health, so bear that in mind. So that is going to do it. There are 2 honorable mentions, those being the Abyssal Lectern and the Abyssal Mage. These 2 are an Electro and Hydro enemies that you can only currently fight in the Spiral Abyss or during the occasional part of the story. They both have the same mechanic that whenever they get down to low HP, they will become invulnerable to damage, and then will quickly summon a shield around themselves of their element. Once you strip the shield away, however, they will immediately die. The easiest way to deal with the Electro is to use a Cryo type attack, and the easiest way to deal with the Hydro is to use a Cryo type attack. Aside from those, that should cover pretty much every enemy that is currently in Genshin Impact. This took quite a while to record, so if you found that all helpful, let me know in the comments section down below. And if you have any more suggestions for tips or strategies you'd like to hear, let me know down there as well, and I'll see you guys in a future video. Peace.